The park pulsed with life under the warm touch of the afternoon sun. Children's laughter rang out like wind chimes. Joggers rhythmically thudded along winding paths. And the occasional bark of a dog added texture to the ambient calm. But among the swirling scenes of suburban serenity, one figure sat perfectly still, almost invisible in plain sight. Chuck Norris, wearing a hoodie and dark sunglasses, he blended effortlessly with the weekend crowd. Just another man on a bench, soaking in the rare quiet between storm-like schedules. His shoulders were relaxed, his breathing steady. But beneath the surface, there was a watchfulness, a sense that even now, in rest, his instincts were never fully at ease. He wasn't here to be noticed, but someone was about to make that mistake. Across the park, Officer Kane moved with the swagger of a man who believed the law bent to his will. His uniform was crisp, badge gleaming, boots polished to a militant shine. Yet there was something darker beneath the veneer, something in the way his eyes scanned the park, dissecting the people within it, cataloging them. He didn't look for crime. He looked for difference, and when he found it, he zeroed in like a predator catching scent. Then his gaze locked on Chuck. To Kane, the hood, the sunglasses, the calm defiance of someone simply being without explanation, it didn't sit right. "What's a guy like that doing here, dressed like that?" Kane muttered under his breath, as if trying to justify the conclusion he'd already drawn. His pace quickened. Gravel crunched beneath his boots as he approached. He didn't call for backup. He didn't ask questions. He didn't even pause. He stopped in front of Chuck's bench like a boulder rolling into place, blocking the sun, casting a long shadow. Hey, you." His voice cut through the air like a snap of thunder. "What are you doing here?" Chuck looked up slowly, pushing the sunglasses just low enough to reveal a pair of piercing eyes. Still calm, but now tinged with focus. "Sitting," he replied. His tone was even measured. Not aggressive, not mocking. Just factual. Kane's expression hardened. "This isn't a hangout spot," he growled. "Move along. You don't belong here. You don't belong here." There it was, the subtle rot beneath the authority, not protecting the peace, policing it through bias. The words hung in the air like smoke, the insult not fully formed but fully felt. Chuck's head tilted slightly. He stared back with a calm that unnerved. Then, quietly but firmly, "People like me, what's that supposed to mean?" Kane didn't answer. He didn't need to. His clenched jaw, his hand tightening around the baton, those said enough. But Chuck didn't flinch. He didn't blink. "I'm not breaking any laws. I'm enjoying the park just like everyone else." Kane's patience snapped like dry wood. His voice, now venom-laced, spilled out in a harsh growl. "Well, don't play games with me, smartass. I gave you an order." "And I gave you the law," Chuck said coolly. That was it. Kane's baton flashed through the air with brutal speed. The thud as it connected with Chuck's back was loud enough to stop nearby joggers mid-stride. Parents clutched their kids. A dog barked, startled. Chuck hunched forward slightly from the force, but he didn't fall. He didn't cry out. Instead, he slowly straightened. His sunglasses slipped off, falling into the dirt. And now, Kane saw his eyes. They weren't confused or afraid. They were calm, calculated, dangerous. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," Chuck said, his voice low and slow, like a thunderstorm rolling in over still water. For the first time, Kane hesitated. He had no idea who he just hit, but he was about to find out. And so was the rest of the park. Gasps rippled across the park like shockwaves. Disbelief painted the faces of bystanders as phones appeared in trembling hands, camera lenses struggling to keep focus on the confrontation unraveling before them. What had started as a routine stroll in the sun had now transformed into something unthinkable, an act of violence broadcast in real time, committed by a man in uniform. And then Chuck Norris stood up. But he didn't lurch to his feet in anger. He rose with a terrifying grace, calm, deliberate, controlled. It was like watching a storm form out of a clear sky. Inch by inch, his full height emerged, towering, his broad shoulders casting an imposing shadow over the scene. The change was subtle but seismic. One moment, he was just a guy on a bench. The next, he was a force of nature. His sunglasses gone, his eyes now locked on Officer Kane with an intensity that could shatter glass. His jaw tightened. Fists clenched. Muscles coiled like steel cables winding back under immense pressure. His voice broke the silence with the weight of inevitability. A big mistake. The two words cut sharper than any blade, measured, cold, and laced with a fury that hadn't yet been unleashed, but promised devastation when it came. Kane flinched, not visibly, not enough for anyone else to notice, but Chuck saw it, felt it. Kane's arrogance didn't falter, yet. His lips twisted into a sneer, an ugly thing, born from a lifetime of unchecked authority. "Oh yeah? What are you going to do about it, tough guy?" He mocked, voice dripping with condescension. He thought he still held the upper hand, that his badge would shield him, that his baton would protect him, that Chuck Norris was just another name, another face, another target. He didn't know who he was dealing with. Chuck didn't respond. Not with words. He simply stepped forward. One pace, not rushed, not theatrical, just closer. The air between them thickened, a storm front closing in. "You think that badge gives you the right to hurt people?" Chuck's voice was calm, but every syllable carried the weight of an indictment. "You think this park is yours to control?" It wasn't a question. It was a judgment. Kane rattled, lashed out again, rage boiling past the limits of reason. He swung the baton once more, this time wild, fueled by humiliation. But Chuck's body reacted with inhuman speed. His hand flashed forward, a blur of motion, snatching the baton midair like it was nothing more than a toy. The crowd gasped. A second later, the weapon clattered to the ground at Kane's feet. Useless, defeated, Chuck's stance changed. He didn't raise his fists. He didn't strike. Instead, his voice rang out, cold and clear. That was your warning. It wasn't bravado. It wasn't theater. It was truth. His words hung in the air like a blade. Kane didn't listen. Blinded by rage and wounded pride, he lunged. A desperate move, a final attempt to reclaim dominance. But Chuck was no longer still. He was wind and fire, a blur of power and precision. With the deftness of a master, Chuck sidestepped the attack, his movements fluid and instinctive. Kane's momentum betrayed him. His foot snagged, his balance faltered, and with a calculated sweep, Chuck's leg hooked behind his and sent him crashing to the earth, face first. The crowd erupted. Cheers roared across the park like a wave breaking on a shore. "That's what he gets," someone shouted. The air was electric. A moment of raw, unfiltered justice had just played out before their eyes, and they were here for it. But Chuck remained unmoved. No fist pumping, no smiles, just calm, focused silence. His eyes locked on the man groaning at his feet, his face half buried in grass and shame. Kane, furious and humiliated, scrambled to his feet like a wounded animal cornered by a lion. His pride ignited into blind rage. He charged again, but then backup arrived. Two officers sprinted across the grass, their radios crackling, weapons drawn. Eyes locked on the towering figure they'd seen flatten their colleague. They skidded to a halt. And then recognition struck. The taller of the two stumbled, his hand loosening around his weapon. His eyes widened, mouth falling open. "Wait, is that Chuck Norris?" The words hit like a thunderclap. It wasn't just surprise, it was disbelief, awe. The sight of the man they'd grown up watching, idolizing, now standing in the middle of a real-world showdown. Real, raw, unstoppable. Kane turned to them, disheveled, seething, lips trembling with rage and disbelief. "What are you doing? Arrest him!" But the officers didn't move. They stared at Chuck, at Kane, at the discarded baton. The phone cameras recording. The crowd, unified in support for the man they now realized was not just a victim, but a legend. Kane's voice cracked. "Are you just gonna stand there?" But even the air seemed to hesitate, waiting to see what Chuck Norris would do next. Collision smash that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to see what happens. Kane's eyes darted in every direction, panic replacing the arrogance that had once colored his every move. The crowd was still, silent. Phones still raised, recording, judging, watching. And then the tone shifted. The second officer stepped forward, calm, composed, but there was steel in his voice and precision in his posture. This man wasn't rattled. He was in control. "Mr. Norris," he said, his voice laced with deference. "Are you all right, sir? We didn't know you were here." His words rang with reverence. the weight of recognition settling over him like a cloak. He wasn't just addressing a civilian. He was addressing a national icon, a man who had fought evil on screen and off. And now, he'd just brought a badge-wielding bully to his knees without breaking a sweat. Kane's mouth dropped open as the truth finally hit him. Wait, what? This guy's somebody important. The words stumbled out like a last gasp from a sinking ship. In that moment, Kane wasn't just a disgraced officer. He was a man completely out of his depth. The mask of power he'd worn for years now lay shattered at his feet. The second officer turned toward him, and his glare could have melted steel. Not just important, he growled, the fury in his voice barely contained. That's Chuck Norris, one of the most respected figures in the country. A man who's inspired generations. And he jabbed a finger in Kane's direction, assaulted him. The rebuke struck like a thunderclap. Kane's swagger collapsed. His spine seemed to fold in on itself as if trying to disappear. His jaw worked silently, desperate to find words that would excuse the inexcusable. I didn't know, he stammered, eyes wide, voice cracking. But Chuck Norris didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his presence steady as bedrock. The composure he carried wasn't forced, it was earned. Built from decades of confronting injustice and never backing down. You didn't care to know? Chuck said, voice quiet but piercing. You judged me on sight. You decided who I was, without asking, without even speaking to me like a human being. He leaned in just slightly, enough to ensure every syllable landed like a blow to the gut. That says a hell of a lot more about you than it does about me. The crowd murmured their agreement. The tide fully turned. And then the senior officer's voice rang out, firm, commanding, final. Officer Kane, he said, staring daggers into the broken man standing before him. You are hereby placed under investigation for gross misconduct. Gasps echoed through the park. Effective immediately, you will hand over your badge and your firearm. The authority in his tone was absolute. There was no room for debate, no margin for denial, only the bitter taste of consequence. Kane opened his mouth, his ego making one last desperate lunge for oxygen. Sir! Enough! The senior officer snapped, silencing him with a single gesture. We've got a park full of witnesses and footage. Your actions are inexcusable. This department will not tolerate behavior like this. Not under my command. There it was, the sound of justice, cold and clean. Kane, hands trembling, slowly reached for his badge. It slipped from his fingers and hit the ground with a sharp metallic clink. His firearm followed. His face was ashen. His career was over, and he knew it. As the scene unfolded, Chuck Norris remained unmoved. Silent, watchful, he wasn't gloating. He didn't need to. Justice didn't need celebration. It just needed to be seen. And now it had. Ushered away in disgrace, escorted by his fellow officers, the crowd erupted into a thunderous ovation, their cheers cascading through the marketplace like a wave of jubilation. In the midst of this impromptu celebration, Chuck Norris turned to face the crowd. His expression a mixture of humility and just quotes humility and gratitude as he addressed the people of the town. Thank you for your support, he began, his voice resonant with genuine appreciation. Chuck Norris's gaze swept across the sea of faces before him, a note of solidarity and empathy coloring his voice. This isn't about who I am, he declared, his tone ringing. With conviction, it's about standing up to injustice, about refusing to accept mistreatment and discrimination in any form. No one, celebrity or not, deserves to be treated the way Officer Kane treated me today. It's up to all of us together to demand better, to hold those who abuse their power. No, accountable. Chuck Norris's message of rallying CC for justice and dignity struck a chord in the hearts of the assembled crowd. As if energized by his words, they cheered even louder, their voices reaching a crescendo of enthusiasm and agreement. His speech, a simple yet impassioned call to action, resonated with the very core of their being, sparking a fire of resolve that illuminated their faces with a sense of hope and determination. As Chuck Norris made his way through the crowd, his steps purposeful and dignified, a young boy broke through the throng of spectators, a notebook clutched tightly. In his small hands, his eyes shone with a childlike wonder, the adoration for his hero written plainly on his face. "Can I get your autograph, Mr. Norris?" he asked, his voice trembling with excitement and awe. Chuck Norris, his expression softening at the sight of the boy, nodded with a warm smile, kneeling down to sign the notebook with a genuine smile that radiated kindness and warmth. Chuck Norris knelt down to meet the young boy's gaze, his towering frame becoming a gentle and approachable presence. "Of course, buddy," he said, his voice filled with a gentle affection that put the child instantly at ease. "So, what's your name?" Chuck Norris's simple question, asked with a sincerity that belied his celebrity status, melted away the barriers between them, creating an intimate moment of connection that transcended their differences in age and stature. As the boy looked on with unbridled excitement, Chuck Norris' pen danced across the notebook, creating a keepsake that would surely be treasured for years to come. In that moment, the boy's mother stepped forward, her gratitude palpable in her voice. "Thank you for standing up today," she said, her words tinged with a powerful sense of relief. "You've made a difference, not just for my son, but for everyone who witnessed what you did today. Thank you." Her eyes shone with a blend of appreciation and admiration, her gratitude a testament to Chuck Norris's heroic deeds. Chuck Norris, a coolage, the mother's gratitude with a nod, his expression conveying a deep understanding of his responsibility as a hero, a leader, and a role model. "It's not just about standing up for yourself," he affirmed, his words carrying the weight of his convictions. "It's about standing up for everyone, about ensuring that justice and dignity are upheld for all. That's what being a hero is truly about." With those words, Chuck Norris turned away, the golden rays of the setting sun illuminating his powerful form as he walked off into the distance.